Third CDL Major is done and the Seattle Surge are the champions. They followed the trend of having a new winner every single event. And I thought this was the perfect time to do an updated power rankings tier list for all the teams in the CDL. So by now, if you guys watch my other tier list videos, you know how I like to do it. We're gonna be starting from the bottom, working our way all the way up to the top. And just to preface this, I know I say it because I actually said it in my videos. This is a tier list, so I do, I guess, give rankings. That just helps me out. But if any of these teams are in the same tier, they can be very interchangeable, okay? So starting right off, the worst team in the league, this one is for sure a given. And the only team that's going to be in the D tier is the Paris Legion. Now, they've had glimpses of, I don't even know if I can call it success, but of competitiveness. You know, maybe that they were about to turn the page and start seeing some success, getting some wins. But realistically, man, they're not anywhere near the level of the other teams. Now, moving up to the C tier, this is where it gets interesting, man. And I'll tell you what, it's crazy because if you were to compare this tier list to a tier list I made earlier in the season, or not even mine specifically, just anyone's, you would be mind blown by this, especially because they currently are in the hunt. Well, yeah, I mean, they're not completely safe, but they're kind of comfortable for getting a spot at champs. But the 11th best team in the league, first team in the C tier for me, is going to be the Boston Breach. I've never really been high on them. You guys probably know that. I got some backlash early on in the season for never kind of giving them the credit that they deserved, a lot of people thought. But they're just a very basic ass team. They have a very low ceiling. I mean, they probably have a lower ceiling than a team like the Paris Legion, but they are better than them. Like, they're solid. They just don't have enough. They don't have enough talent. They don't have enough firepower. And I think now, as other teams are starting to learn the game, you know, compared to early on in Vanguard's life cycle, where I thought Boston Breach, they were, you know, kind of ahead in just understanding the most optimal way to play Vanguard. They're just slowly falling off. When it came to this qualifier, they went 1-4. And they just didn't look competitive at all. The only team that they did beat in the qualifier was London, another, you know, poorly performing team. The only difference, though, because London is going to be joining them, I have them at the number 10 spot, also in the C tier, is I just think London have a lot higher of a ceiling, and I feel like we're kind of seeing them figure out what's going wrong. You know, London is another team. They're high up on the standings. Like, they're currently in 4th in CDL standings for the entire year, mainly just because of how well they performed early on in the season. But they actually are kind of giving me something to get behind compared to the Boston Breach. And then coming in at number 9, also in the C tier. So like I said, all three of these teams for me could be interchangeable, but I definitely think that they are all in the same tier. It's going to be the Los Angeles Guerrillas. Now, this team won a major this year. They won the second major with Spart. Gunless, he's back in though, okay? He got healthy, got the surgery he needed. The only issue is he hasn't been performing well. LAG hasn't been performing well. And yeah, it's basically what I said. The event win with Spart was a fluke. You know, I could see that from a mile away. Cinderella story for sure. And I'm glad they did it because, once again, I have a lot of friends on that team. But they just don't look good. They started to fall off after the major win, which wasn't surprising. But I thought with Gunless coming back, maybe they were going to have a clean slate because Gunless is a great player. But they look lost. And then moving on to the B tier, we could start with, I mean, I'm just going to say it, the 8th best team in the CDL right now. And the first team in the B tier, obviously, it's going to be the Florida Mutineers. Now, this Mutineers team is probably the weirdest team in the league for me right now, because every time they play Optic Texas, they look like they could legitimately be a champion in this game. And then they play other teams and they just look completely lost. Like they're not playing the same. They're not as confident, or maybe they just have more respect for Optic, or I don't know what the case may be. But this team is so hit or miss. They are one of the most inconsistent teams in the league, okay? And I think a big issue, man, I say this a lot, and I know I'm going to get hate for it. And I don't want to say this, okay? I'm not trying to push a narrative at all, especially because this person that I'm about to talk about, he seems like a good kid. But Dave Patty has to go. He has to go. There is one constant with this Florida Mutineers team, and it's Dave Patty going 70 and 70 in a series, having least kills, least deaths, having a 1.0 KD or above, least damage. I go back and look at all the series they played. It doesn't matter, online, on land, major, qualifier. It doesn't change. He just isn't impactful to this Florida Mutineers team. And this team has a lot of potential. This Florida team can beat anyone, but they need to find just a player who fits their system better and can really help them instead of hurting them. Next up, we have the number 7 team, also in the B tier. It's gonna be the Minnesota Rocker. Now, this team, this is an odd team for me to gauge because they made the roster change, right? They brought in Havoc. The Pro-Am didn't go smoothly at all. Then we saw the online qualifiers for Major 3. They went a perfect 5-0, and they did it rather convincingly. They beat some really good competition. They've always been a very good S&D team, but it looked like Havoc transformed this team when it came to the respawns. And then they go into the Major. Honestly, I was super high on them, especially because following the trend, I was like, oh, new winner every event. Minnesota looks good, you know? They lost a very close series to LAT in winners round 1, okay? It went game 5. Then they fell down to losers bracket where they beat the brakes off Boston Breeze 3-0. Wasn't surprised there. And then they got 3-0'd by Toronto Ultra. I still am pretty high on this Minnesota team because they looked good for a decent period of time. I feel like they finally are meshing with Havoc on the roster. Are they maybe better online? It's a possibility. We'll have to see. That's why I have them in the B tier along with a couple other teams. But for right now, I have them as the number 7 team in the B tier, whatever you want to call it. All interchangeable. I'm going to keep saying it so I don't get cooked. Moving on, though, we have the Pro-Am champions, NYSL. Now, you guys might think that I have them a little too high, but let me just break it down. So NYSL, obviously, they picked up Kismet. They went to the Pro-Am, and they won it. And they did it very, very dominantly, in my opinion. And it was worth 0 CDL points, which sucks if you are a NYSL player or a fan of the team, because that meant that this major and the qualifiers was going to be huge for them. But they performed pretty well in the qualifiers. They went 3-2 in qualifiers. They looked like that they were kind of still trending upwards going into this major. They got double first rounded. They lost to Seattle Surge 3-2, and then they went down, they lost to London. But that Seattle Surge series went round 11, game 5. So yes, that's how it happened. I'm talking in what ifs. But if that series goes the other way, who knows how far they can make it. Now, it's no excuse that, oh, that series killed their vibe, killed their momentum, their mental game for the rest of the weekend. But it's a very legitimate reason that could have happened. And I think their performance since picking up Kismet has been very good. It's been very good, definitely tiers above the other teams that are already in the tier list. And I think they are still a good team. Now, they're probably not going to make champs, but I still think that they are a B tier team. And I think that they are, B tier, I guess is, well, I mean, they're solid. Coming in at number 5, and the last team in the B tier, I already know I'm about to get a lot of hate for it. It is the LA Thieves. LAT, they got top 4 at the Major 3. At the Major, they played a red-hot Minnesota Rocker team round 1. They were able to win that series 3-2, winning both SNDs too, which has been one of their biggest issues throughout the entire year. Then in the next round, well, didn't go as planned. They got absolutely 3-0'd by FAZE. Wasn't close at all. And then they fell down into losers bracket where they went up against Optic Texas and they beat them 3-1. And then, unfortunately for them and for me, since I want to see them win, they lost the series to Toronto Ultra 3-1. Versus Optic and versus Toronto, 3 out of the 4 series that they played, they looked good. Like, I can't lie. They did look good. They looked like that they could win all of those series. Obviously, they won 2 of them, not including the Kickoff Classic. But whether you want to include the Pro-Am or not, they are the 3rd highest team when it comes to average placing. Now, yes, they don't have some of the highs, right? Like, they're ahead of LAG, but LAG won an event. I get that, but it shocked me. That's my whole point, is it shocked me that even with their performance, their average placing is still the 3rd highest in the league. So they're in the B tier. But moving on to number 4, and the first team that's going to be in the A tier, it's going to be the Toronto Ultra. They are currently sitting at 5th in the CDL standings overall. And this team is a team that looked really good in the beginning, and then they fell off a cliff. where they couldn't win a hard point. Their respawn looked super shaky. Even their S&D, like, I thought for sure this team was going to be making a roster move. I thought for sure. It seemed like something just wasn't working anymore. But guess what? They figured out whatever it was. Got to give credit to Marky B and just the management over there, because this Toronto Ultra team turned it around in this qualifiers, in this major, because I couldn't believe it, to be honest with you. They lost a very close series in winners round 1, which I thought was going to go game 5. I'll be honest, they choked the control versus Atlanta FaZe, but then they made a run in the losers bracket. They beat Paris 3-1. They 3-0'd Minnesota, 3-0'd Florida, 3-1'd LAT, and then they lost a game 5 to Atlanta FaZe, ultimately getting them 3rd place. They were close to doing a similar run that LAG had, losing the first round and then just cleaning out the entire losers bracket. But the most important thing is Toronto is back, in my opinion. They're heating up at the right time. I know that I said they're 5th in CDL points. I currently have them in the A tier, currently in the 4th slot, 4th best team. But I really like this Toronto team. They're very well rounded when they're on. Not only all the players, but just the team in general when it comes to every single game mode. And I think that this team will end out the season on a high note. Moving on to the 3rd best team in the league, also in the A tier, I have the Seattle Surge. They just won the last event. They looked great. Pred looked great. Sib looked great. Mac looked great. Accuracy looked great. A little less great than the others, but they all played phenomenally. But I've seen this happen before with this Seattle team. They started out the game very hot. I thought that they were ahead of a lot of teams, similarly to Toronto. These two teams are very similar in my opinion right now. They fell off a cliff and then they slowly kind of improved and then they were stagnant. And then they just had this burst, okay, into a championship team, into a team that looks great. But can they do it again? Or is it a one-off? That's the issue for me. They're a great team. Obviously, I have them in the A tier. They're 3rd best team in my opinion throughout the entire year. Or I guess I should just say the updated version, right, from what we've seen. But I can't move them any higher in my opinion. And then finally, for the S tier, you guys probably could have guessed it by now. It's Optic and it's FaZe. Now, Optic I have as the number 2 team. I could potentially see Optic being a little too high, and this is no disrespect to the Optic fans or the Optic players, because they did get 6th place again. So their major placings are 1st, 6th, 6th, and it doesn't matter. They got 1st with Illy, they got 6th with Illy, they got 6th with Pro Loot at the major. I think they got 6th at the Pro Am with General or whatever the case may be. And they also look great consistently. I mean, they're number 2 in CDL standings. In the qualifiers, they went 4-1. They've consistently been a top team the entire year. Now, in the actual major, for some reason, they can't beat the Florida Mutineers. Does not matter. They can't beat them. And then they lost a tough series to LAT, which, in my opinion, I thought that they were going to win. You know, they won the first map pretty easily. Then they went to the S&D. They were up 4-1. Dashy falls off the map. Would have put them up 5-1 because I think that they would have won that 2v2. And they just crumbled. So I still think that they are an S tier team. I will say maybe with this is the only one I wouldn't interchange. I know I said basically every other team on all the other tiers you could swap and would be a fair take. But Atlanta FaZe is the best team in the game still. And I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this because they can't ice up. They can't. They basically are the Buffalo Bills from the early 90s where they went to like 4 Super Bowls, lost them all. And I don't know why, because this Atlanta FaZe team is normally unbelievable when it comes to winning the actual championship. But they are the only team that has been in every single major finals this year. All 3 of them. And yeah, they've kind of gotten beaten down kind of badly in all 3 series. They lost, won the Optic, won the LAG, now won the Seattle. But they're there. And any of the stats that I've been bringing up throughout this video, it shows you how inconsistent this game is, how inconsistent Vanguard is. When it's a new winner every event and they're still there, you have to just understand, I guess, how good they're playing to a certain degree to be in every single finals. So I have Atlanta FaZe in the S tier. I do think that they still are the best team in the game. And that's a tier list. Also, I was thinking, I don't know if you guys want me to do this or not, but I was thinking of doing an updated individual like player tier list for each role like I did. I don't know the last time I did it, but let me know in the comment section if you want to see me do it, or if you want me to stay away from it, if you absolutely hate it, you think I suck at it, I'm trash, I have the worst takes. But yeah, just let me know, and I'm gonna see y'all when I see y'all.